right, so I wanted to talk about chief AI officers. One thing that you might have seen in the news is that Biden, the Biden administration, sorry, that was a weird spoonerism. The Biden administration has ordered for all United States departments to hire chief AI officers. Now, I don't know that they have specified what the roles and responsibilities of those chief AI officers should be, but in my capacity as a consultant, I have also recommended that clients should also appoint at least someone at a director or VP level as the head of AI. But honestly, I would recommend that everyone, every company, every nation, every government department hire a chief AI officer. So there's a few things that you need to think about when doing this. One is, what is the responsibility of these chief AI officers? What do they do? What are their measurements of success? But then number two, how do you find them? What kind of personality traits do you look for? Now, unfortunately, because there is such a talent shortage of AI, the salaries that even directors of AI product or head of AI product command. I saw a few months ago before I deleted my LinkedIn that Netflix had a position open. I think it was head of AI product, and it was a $800,000 or $900,000 a year salary. Most people, most companies are not going to be able to afford that. And so in consulting, some of my clients were not able to find anyone in the marketplace. So I said, what you have to do is you have to develop internal talent. And this is true. It's been a while, particularly in the tech industry, because there's been such a glut of talent that wages have gone down. And rather than investing in internal training, a lot of companies have gotten lazy and just try and hire in the marketplace. When I first got started in my IT career, it was the golden age because there was such a talent shortage that every company offered training. I got thousands and thousands of dollars per year of free training, even from small companies, because they realized there is no one qualified. But after doing that for 5 or 10 years, guess what? Everyone is trained up. And so it's not until you have a fundamental paradigm shift in technology and there's a talent shortage again that companies have to invest in talent. And there are plenty of sectors that never forget this. So a previous company that I worked for, they relied very heavily on Oracle. And Oracle is such a rarefied and specific talent that they always had a pipeline, a training pipeline, partnering with universities to develop talent and have a constant stream of developing talent. Now, not every sector does this, not every technology does this. AI, however, is going to be so pervasive and so saturated that we're going to see everyone with any talent in AI getting snapped up real fast and commanding very high salaries. So this is basically what we saw in the late 90s and early 2000s. Kind of when I got started in my IT career was 2006, 2007, where it was basically you had any certifications, immediate $50,000 salary. When I retired from IT, 6-figure salary easily because of my specialization in VMware. Now, okay, so I've outlined why we're going to have a talent shortage at all levels. So this goes from prompt engineering to directors to VPs to chief AI officers. So if I haven't convinced you, maybe this video isn't for you. Moving on. Now, okay, assuming that you've bought in and you say, okay, I need a VP of AI, I need a director of AI, I need a chief AI officer, and I need to develop that talent. So what do you look for? I'm assuming that you're not going to hire from out there because you probably don't want to shell out $1 million salary, as most companies can't afford. So how do you develop that internal talent? First, you hire for personality. Nobody has the skills that we need. I remember some of my clients, some potential clients would approach me. They're like, hey, you're the cognitive architecture guy. We want to deploy a whole bunch of agents that do X, Y, and Z. And I said, that is research. It is not commercially ready. And so it's like, you probably see in the memes out there, it's like, someone demands like, we need 5 years of experience with this tool. And it's like, yeah, I invented that tool 2 years ago. Nobody has 5 years of experience with this. So you hire for personality. And the personality traits that I recommend that people hire for is one, voracious appetite. People who eat, sleep, and breathe AI. There's no substitute for that level of focus. And the reason that this is really important, first and foremost, you always hire for personality. That is always true no matter what. But one of the things that I've noticed is even chief innovation officers that came up in the 90s and 2000s, earlier 2000s, they are still skeptical even of data science, let alone AI. It's new, and you know, it sucks to say it, but sometimes you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Sometimes you can. I still get people in the comments saying, oh, I've been in AI since the 70s and this is not going to be any different. And it's like, maybe, but it could also be very different. And so you have that skepticism, and that's just not going to work. So you need to find people who are the most passionate about AI, the people who will not shut up about AI, and you promote them. You put them in places of leadership, you make sure that they get the talent development that they need, and so on and so forth. And so then, okay, great, that's how you find them, that's how you promote them internally. What do they do? What are their job specifications? You know, how do you measure their success? So one of the chief things that a chief AI officer should be responsible for is talent development. So the cardinal rule, and I have heard this from dozens of people, other consultants, other specialists, is every company or every department needs to start treating AI like a core competency. It is as core of a competency as using email, as using telephones, as using Excel. It is like, basically, if you don't have AI competency, you probably won't get hired here in a couple of years. It is just going to be treated like a baseline competency that everyone in the company has. So that's responsibility number one, there we go, that every chief AI officer should have. Oh, and also I might call it a CAIO, CAIO, because like ciao is like, I think that's Italian for like hi or bye or whatever. So your CAIO officer, no, that sounds dumb, I won't say that again. Your chief AI officer should be responsible for internal talent development above all else, because the level of competence that your people have is going to determine your success in pivoting to AI. So how do you do that? You host hackathons. And oh, by the way, for hackathons to be successful, they need like VP or higher level sponsorship. So get good at hackathons. That will get people's feet wet. And it's weird because, and I see this out there in the world, a lot of you people in the comments also talk about this, how a lot of people in companies just have no clue. They don't have the first clue. So your chief AI officer needs to be going to conferences, needs to be sending people to conferences, but also developing that familiarity in-house. So I call it the crawl, walk, run, fly model. And I didn't even come up with that, but it's basically an established model of everyone is at the crawl phase. So the crawl phase is you don't know what you don't know. So you got to jump in, get your feet wet. Go to a conference, have everyone play with ChatGPT or Claude or DALL-E or whatever else, and just start having lunch and learns, those sorts of things. Then you're ready for the walk phase. And oh, by the way, the crawl, walk, run, fly model, this is what the chief AI officer is responsible for in developing the AI strategy. So once you get to the walk phase, this is where you're actually starting to deploy value in the company. So value basically comes from you're either affecting the top line or the bottom line. Put a number to it. Find a way to measure the impact. Are you doing more with less? Are you making more money? Are you spending less money? Are you replacing people? Are you reducing headcount? And I can understand why a lot of my audience is confused, because I often talk directly to corporations, but I'm also very like anti-corporation. But just because the system is how it is, and I don't necessarily have to like it, but we do have to work with it within the system. So I just wanted to pause and mention that. So the walk phase is actually deploying value to the company. The value, as I said, put a number to it, figure out, headcount or productivity or whatever. You're going to need to come up with new KPI. You might even need to hire specialists who are good at coming up with these KPI, because a lot of the impact is not going to be obvious and a lot of the ways to measure it will be new. Now, that's not to say that you need to reinvent the wheel. Plenty of old school ways of measuring things are going to be fine too. Talk to your finance people. I've talked to some finance people. They love this kind of thing. So yeah, once you talk to your finance people, once you have deployed some value in the walk phase, the next phase is the run phase. And so run is where you start to operationalize things. So the number one cardinal rule of the run phase is operationalize. You want to bake everything that you've learned into procedures. You want to make sure that you have new KPI, update your RACI matrix to reflect the things that you've learned. And that's pretty simple, at least conceptually. So, crawl phase is get your feet wet, number one rule. The walk phase is find value, add value, start measuring it. Number three, the run phase is start to operationalize everything. And then number four, the fly phase, is establish a center of excellence. And so a center of excellence is a concept where basically you say, hey, this is our alpha team. This is our A team that is responsible for really driving the business strategy. These are the people that you send. They're kind of like DARPA, right? Where it's just like you have this crack team of your top people who are great with AI and can solve problems, and you point them at different parts of the industry and say, go augment that part of our business with artificial intelligence. So those are the kind of fundamental responsibilities of the chief AI officer, and how I would go about it, how I would coach people doing this. Now, the next phase is, what are the problems you're going to come up with? What are the resistances and the pitfalls and those sorts of things that you're going to run into? Number one is reluctance and resistance. Multiple studies now have shown that the more employees use AI, the more they fear for their job. And it doesn't matter what the personality of the CEO is, because plenty of CEOs also say, hey, I'm not going to replace you, but the expectation is you learn AI. But what happens is, as people see that AI is expanding in capacity, they realize I'm replaceable, and no amount of training or learning is going to keep up with this machine. Now, is there a solution to that? I have no idea. I haven't heard of anyone overcoming that yet. Now, at the same time, there's also news out there of entire departments getting laid off, whether it's marketing departments or translators or copy editors or call center people. So people are gonna like clam up. And this happens from time to time, particularly in the tech industry, whenever you have a paradigm shift. From history, one of the chief examples that I use is telephone operators. That was fully automated. Typist pools back in the pre-electronic area, or where when you couldn't have like Xerox printers. So typists, telephone operators, there's only so much that you can do to safeguard your job. And so whenever I see like, the Screen Actors Guild and other industries, whether they are protected by, gosh, hang on, my brain's being dumb. I'll need to edit this part out. Unions. So some unions are trying to say like, hey, you don't replace anyone with AI, but the economic pressure is there. So again, if you figured out how to overcome people's fear and reluctance of AI, let me know in the comments, but I don't know that that it's going to be done. Now, what might happen is, as the Gartner hype cycle evolves, people will say, oh, okay, well, it was really exciting, but we found the limitations. One thing I would caution against, though, is that a lot of people have normalcy bias, which is basically that, oh, well, where AI is today is where it's going to be forever. One thing to point out, we are nowhere near the top, and it's just going to keep evolving. Sam Altman even said this in an interview recently, where he's like, there's two kinds of startups. And how did he say it? There was like, there's the startup that assumes that AI's capacity today is how it's always going to be, and they always get their, they always get bowled under. He's like, we're going to bulldoze you. And then the other startup is the one that builds something else. I don't remember exactly how he articulated it, but the point is, AI is going to continue advancing. So anyways, that's the number one piece of resistance that chief AI officers are going to have. And you might get it from other leadership too, where other leadership are going to be skeptical. They're going to, provide pushback. They're going to say, well, what about my people? You're going to have people quitting, resigning, revolting. And of course, this is a nightmare scenario. There are many positions in many industries that are intrinsically resistant to this kind of thing, whether because of the high friction environment or so on. But again, one of the rules of thumb that I have is that if you do it entirely in front of a computer, it's entirely possible that you can be replaced by AI. Now, the safeguard here is that right now, most industries that are using AI are using it exclusively or mostly for augmentation. And so that augmentation first model increases productivity. But again, like I said, studies show that the more that your job is augmented AI, the more that people realize that they are replaceable. The next big problem that people have is pioneering architectures. So these are the kinds of questions that I still get all the time, which is, hey, generative AI can do X, Y, and Z. How do we deploy this? How do we architect a solution? And there's a few things. One, some people do have misconceptions about what AI is capable of, but also you got to realize the cycle between the science, the frontier cutting edge of science, and then the commercial deployment of these models is very short. It's on the order of 6 to 12 months, up to 18 months. We have never been in a place where the cycle from lab to commercial availability is so short. Everyone is learning as fast as they can. And so what you have to do is you have to be very, very strategic about how much research time and investment you put in to coming up with new solutions. And so one of the cardinal rules that I have told every client is if there's something the model can't do yet, just wait. Don't spend days, weeks, months trying to overcome the limitations of the models today. Why? Because literally all of that effort will have been wasted in 6 months when the next model comes out. Now, I will say that finding the limits of what models can do right now, that is a worthwhile exercise. So the rule of thumb there is take the model to its maximum potential until it fails. But don't go beyond that, because you're not going to be able to overcome things like context windows. As larger models come out with, 1 million tokens, 2 million tokens, infinite tokens, again, I had people even as recently as late last year messaging me, how do I architect a solution that overcomes the token window limit when we still had 4,000 and 8,000 and 16,000 token limits? And I said, don't waste any time on that. Just wait. Guess what? People who wasted their time trying to overcome token window limits, they wasted their time, and now it's no longer a constraint. So those are some of the big things. There's plenty more conversation to be had around this, but I think that's enough for one day. This video turned out to be a much longer video than I anticipated. So thanks for watching. Cheers.